Espera. Good
Yeah.
evening. Hey, Ann. This is Joe Umami. I'm joined by Ann Lee, a retired college professor and community member at the Daily Kos. She's a member of the National Council of Independent Scholars and is a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. This is the After Hours show with the Autonomous Collective. I believe this is season 2, episode 29 already.
Whoa.
And I am sans choking again. No kitchen tonight. Maybe next week I might have a burner.
Great.
Hot plate, maybe.
Looking forward to it.
We'll be back in Oslo at that time. But at the moment, we're in the birthplace of democracy. And I had a conversation with some anarchists today that I thought might be interesting for people. But I'm woefully unprepared. So maybe you want to start out with the rant or the Ukraine, Russia-Ukraine.
I'll just start with the week in review. It's been a tough week for everyone. I think all these American politics has just been distracting with all these people nominated and questionable qualifications for cabinet members, etc. Pete Hegseth's mom made phone calls to senators. Trump really isn't weighing in on this, so I think he's going to let Pete sort of twist in the wind. I think we'll see whether it goes forward eventually. We'll see. I think it's just a typical Trump. He's going to, when he steps back, and if there's a reaction, he'll double down. We'll see. He proposed a couple of people to replace Hegseth with Ron DeSantis or Joni Ernst, among others. And so there's been ambivalence, let's just put it that way. So that kind of began, aside from Pete Hegseth's mom wrote a scathing critique of her son in 2018, I think, when he was divorcing wife number 2. He's on wife number 3, who he's been taking around to his little meetings with senators. And it's an interesting little note, and I assume that it was a note that was used during the divorce proceeding, so that's how it got into the news. So wife number 2 did that. I would assume there's no tracing of the source for that necessarily. But Pete's mom rose to his defense once it came out, so that's kind of been a sidelight this week during that. It's unfortunate that there's just no cronyism. I sarcastically noted that no cronyism, even though Trump nominated Jared Kushner's dad, Charles Kushner, who pleaded guilty in 2004 to 16 counts of tax evasion, a single count of retaliating against a federal witness, which was his wife, who was uh, married to the son-in-law, who was or the brother-in-law. I'm sorry. She was a witness in the federal campaign finance investigation. So he arranged a honey trap to seduce for a prostitute to seduce his brother-in-law, and sent a videotape of the encounter to his sister. Needless to say, leverage was going on, and the prosecutor in the case was, before he became governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie. So it has all of those things. Trump granted Charles Kushner, dad of Jared, clemency as part of a wave of 26 pardons he issued with roughly a month left in the first term. And included in those clemencies or pardons was Paul Manafort, who was convicted of fraud and a bunch of other things related to Ukraine, which it's amazing how all these things are interlocked. And of course, Roger Stone Jr., he of the Nixon tattoo on his back. So a kind of interesting group of folks. The other things, of course, is the $5 million Kushner gave to Harvard to get his kid in. Other things are not mentioned at all, of course, in Donald Trump's Truth Social announcement of Kushner. And so that sort of began our week in review. And further on during the week, after the president of Mexico decided to confront Trump on his tariff proposals, that he was going to, put automatic tariffs on the partners in NAFTA, which, is contradictory. And of course, it's Trump's revision of NAFTA, NAFTA 2.0, that he was so damn proud of. Well, now he's just, sort of screwed with it. And some people just don't recognize that little contradiction there. But anyway, the president of Mexico decided, Sheinbaum decided that she would challenge Trump, and Trump backed down, and of course stated that he was all had a good conversation, blah 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 blah. And he didn't truly back down. I think he's going to slap a selective tariff. So just in terms of the actual policies that might occur, it's likely that there will be selective ones, ones that will attack specific elements like the car industry, among others. But the reality, of course, is, along with the immigration, that imports and exports of fruit and vegetables are going to get messed up during this period with price, and needless to say, price rises because of these matters. On the other hand, in our little group, we've discussed way long ago the cartels are not just engaged in drugs. The Mexican cartels are also control, for example, avocado production for the United States. Most of your avocados that you get in the States, not from California, but from places like Mexico. And of course, on the heels of this, and more interesting, of course, is that because Donald Trump is a convicted felon, he cannot travel to Canada. I mean, just Canada is quite specific about that. If you're a criminal, you can't enter Canada. This includes Trump. So therefore, Justin Trudeau visited Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And, it's just the thing that sort of arose as a result of this, pictures of Justin Trudeau at dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Trump, and which an interesting photo which got photobombed by a kid, which also should be interesting. That'll be your next ambassador to someplace. Justin Trudeau promised Donald Trump that Canada would increase surveillance over the long, undefended joint border between Canada and the United States. And, Trump has promised to slap tariffs on Canadian imports. And you'll just see, The fact of the matter is only a very small amount, and with respect, for example, I can't recall, it's a very small amount of crystal meth, a minuscule amount compared to Mexico has crossed into the United States from the Canadian side. But of course, Trump has overestimated that. Needless to say, no, very few people pointed out that Trudeau's flying to Florida, was really the result of Trump not being able to actually go to Canada at all. But that's kind of what the dangers look like. On Further on, Tom Engelhardt wrote a thing for Juan Cole's website talking about how essentially Trump is going to bankrupt America. This is the seventh, I guess, complete bankruptcy, the last bankruptcy in that sense. His greatest skill in life has been, making a kind of the weirdest perspectives inconceivable. That is, with his cabinet picks. And so, no matter what you think, as Engelhardt says, you can never quite fully take him in or know what he's likely to do. It's just the strangest thing that is happening now. But it's either going to all go south, and it probably could all go south at the same moment, or else a crisis will emerge to distract us. I would assert that perhaps a special military operation in Venezuela or some other place could actually happen. The Monroe Doctrine, blah blah. So that could happen as well. So those kinds of things are happening among so many others this week. I pointed out that Justin Sun, the guy who auctioned or bought at auction from Sotheby's a banana taped with duct tape to a wall. Not so much that he bought the banana and duct tape, although I think that came actually people who went to the auction, I think, got duct tape and bananas. But it is a set of instructions and the certificate of authenticity for the banana and the duct tape. He paid $6.2 million for this thing. And there's a subtext for this. Justin Sun also at the same time, which is also bizarrely coincidental, $18 million to Donald Trump, essentially trying to not necessarily buy himself a cabinet post, which some other people have done. It's just very interesting to see how that operates. The owner of the LA Times, for example, has been angling for a while to be appointed. But I think I think Trump is not doing it for some xenophobic sort of way. But anyway, that's a different story. Justin Sun is a cryptocurrency guy, has his own Bitcoin, and I think paid, and I'm not sure, with Sotheby's that they actually accepted Bitcoin for the banana, but so I wrote a little thing because Justin Sun, who clearly does not understand what he's doing, but it's interesting to nonetheless because of unbridled capitalism, wanted to buy a bunch of bananas, not a lovely bunch of coconuts, but a $25,000 in bananas from the vendor who sold the original banana for the auction. So he's trying to, it's clearly a misunderstanding of what the concept of value is in this particular form. So that was interesting. And then Kash Patel, in trouble for being mentioned, at least not fully nominated and certainly not talked to yet, and he hasn't even done the rounds for the making sort of the short list. Sort of. He also produced a short list of enemies of the state, that is, people who are going to be prosecuted, and it's pretty much the Biden administration. The top members of the Biden administration called the deep state shortlist that's going to be prosecuted if Kash Patel is made the FBI director, which of course has all of its own issues. That is that Christopher Wray has to be fired if he leaves, he has to be fired for cause, or else, of course, coerced into resigning because he has another couple of years left on his 10-year appointment. As you can imagine, Kash Patel for 10 years will resemble the J. Edgar Hoover period of running the FBI, which did have enemies lists and surveilled all kinds of folks, including Martin Luther King, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things are there that are part of the history of the United States. I mean, if it weren't for J. Edgar Hoover, we probably would not have had the prominence of the FBI relative to crime during the interwar period. But this is all of the piece. Kash Patel has been, unfortunately or fortunately, widely well spoken for enemies of the state, among other matters. And I think that all of this little yammering, I think, is going to get him into trouble and will not get anywhere, if assuming that this is even going to go anywhere, as because hearings aren't going to occur until Trump takes office. So all of these things are kind of speculative and sort of weird, as I said, and as Tom Engelhardt wrote, this is part of the danger, the bankruptcy of the Trump administration. I began talking about the trial balloons of replacing Pete Hegseth with Ron DeSantis. That alone is its own kind of issue, because I think Ron DeSantis, as much as he's sort of become a sideline relative to the presidential primaries, I think that well, we'll see. If Trump moves ahead, it'll be actually kind of interesting. I think Trump will be constantly looking over his shoulder relative to the Department of Defense, and with all due respect, the largest federal bureaucracy and the largest thing that's worth money in the federal government. So there's that. And lastly, which happened only a couple days ago now, is the assassination of the head of United Healthcare Corporation, one of the largest health providers in the United States, insurance company. The CEO was walking at 6:45 in the morning from his hotel, which is pretty much across the street from a shareholders meeting hotel, and he had been stalked by somebody who proceeded to put a couple of 9mm rounds into him. MSNBC had an interview with their favorite ATF guy, and he said, not a professional hit, even though it looked like one from the point of view of the shooter used a suppressor. But the fact is that the gun jammed 3 times. So the 3 rounds that he dispensed had accompanying them 3 ejected, rounds, which is quite amusing. So you have 3 casings out there that say deny, that had scribbled on them. I'm not sure how it was written on them. This is also interesting. Deny, defend, defect, which resembles the name of a book on insurance claim denials, of which United Healthcare is double the industry average for denial of claims. So there's an entire narrative there, of course, for disgruntled denied claims for given the nature of privatized American healthcare. So there's all that background against which it's operating. The claim that it's a professional hit doesn't seem quite credible, but you never know, and we'll see. The law enforcement has been actually pretty good, and we're actually beginning to get a sense of how it's using surveillance imagery. And Manhattan does have a lot of cameras. There are interesting maps, in fact, of the position. There are several maps of locations of surveillance cameras. If you plan your next surveillance trip to New York, to Manhattan. Anyway, the shooter got away on an electric bicycle, also interesting for all of its own reasons, and is still at large. But the latest information that we have is that he got on a bus in Atlanta. He revealed his face when he got to an Upper West Side hostel, and the person at the desk was flirting with him, but I think she was also being smart in that his face was more fully revealed to other folks. And of course, in my amateurish way of facial recognition, it did look like he was sporting a fake nose, but that's just me. It's blurry imagery and the like, but I think there was some attempt to not look quite as obvious as he was. So there's that going on. And I haven't even talked about Ukraine yet. Joe, do you have something you'd like to intervene with?
Sure thing. Give me a second here.
Go ahead.
Can I see that image? Photo of the boy?
Yep. Poor kid.
Yes. So it's December 6th over there still, but today, just past December 6th, is quite an important day for anarchists and leftist activists because of the fatal police murder of this young teenager in 2008, Alexandros Grigoriopoulos. He was hanging out in kind of the radical neighborhood of Exarchia in Athens and got into some kind of let's say argument with the police. They passed by in their car. The altercation went on. They parked the car at some station and came back and essentially murdered the kid in cold blood. The officers were actually charged and imprisoned, but what happened after, what triggered the murder, triggered extensive riots across Greece. It spread through many cities and then across capitals in the world in solidarity against police violence. So every kind of like May 1st is celebration day. December 6th is quite an ominous reminder of the still ongoing problem with police violence, particularly here in Greece. Doesn't seem to have been much change. The anarchists I spoke to on the street corner in a little town on an undisclosed island here in the East Aegean indicated that the police violence and issue with the neo-Nazis within the police forces is a constant reality that has little changed. This is a memorial to Gregorios in the neighborhood where he was shot. And I've seen banners around town and struggled to understand what they are with the help of Google Live image. What do you call it? Translation is not much of a help. Um, Basically, it's a reminder, never forget December 6th. It isn't over. And they make reference to a friend of Gregorius, Nico Romano, who had a very complicated relationship with the law. He was a friend of Gregorius and apparently was implicated in an armed robbery of a bank, and was tortured by the police, was imprisoned for an extensive amount of time, has tried to, it's every Greek's right to be able to educate themselves while in prison, and he was prevented from doing that. The state is basically trying to label anarchism as terrorism. So if you're an anarchist, that equals terrorism. So a lot of the banners are about, reminders of political prosecutions. He's being held no charges at the moment. There's all kinds of problems, let's say. But again, our translations are not really doing justice. But this is in a prominent area where, on a main thoroughfare, where people can see the messages. And I guess the reason why they're mentioning him again is that he's been recently arrested because of an explosion that took place, and a fingerprint of his was involved. But I'll just want to read from a paper called an article, Putting Ideas on Trial, the Greek State's Laboratory of Repression. It goes in depth into Nico's case and whatnot, but I just want to read a few paragraphs about it. When Nico Romanos and several other anarchists faced trial last year, this was in 2014, I believe, the prosecutor repeatedly emphasized they are anarchists, so their actions are terrorist. This sentence summarized the message that the Greek state aims to send. The case of Nikos Romanos illustrates this clearly. He was sentenced to 15 years and 10 months in prison in 2014 after police arrested and brutally tortured him for expropriating a bank in Veneto, Kozani. A little bit, sounds a lot better than robbing. Expropriating. They also accused him and 5 others of participating in an alleged terrorist organization, the Conspiracy Cells of Fire. All of the accused deny this. The state failed to prove they were part of the network and consequently failed to convict them on charges of conspiracy or terrorism. Considering the burden of proof too high for the state to imprison anarchists for participating in collective struggle, officials set out to invent a new prosecution strategy. For this purpose, the advantage of Article 187A is that it prosecutes an idea. This strategy strikes at the heart of the ungovernable anarchist movement in Greece, which is based above all on a shared ethic. When Nikos Romanos faced additional charges along with his comrades in 2018, he was no longer being charged with carrying out acts of collective terrorism. Rather, he was charged with being an individual terrorist on the basis of his ideas. The consequence was that he received a harsher sentence for being an avowed anarchist than he did for robbing a bank. It's no coincidence that Article 187A was first used in this way against an anarchist who saw his best friend, Alexei Grigoriopoulos, murdered by police on the streets of Exarchia. Nor is it a coincidence that the authorities used Article 187A against Romanos after the hunger strike he carried out in prison in 2014, triggered massive confrontations in Greece and solidarity protests around the world. The Greek authorities hoped to crush the most militant current in the anarchist movement while giving others a false sense of security, as if what happens to Nikos Romanos is an isolated case of an extremist receiving an extreme punishment rather than a step towards the repression of all social movements in Greece. Essentially, prosecution on the grounds of individual terrorism is intended to break down any kind of form of solidarity, making people fear that if they stand up for someone who is targeted by the state, they too could be targeted as quote unquote individual terrorists. The only way to counter this strategy is to create an abundance of solidarity rather than the scarcity they aim to produce. This is not just about Nikos Romanos and other specific imprisoned anarchists. It is about the future of resistance itself, and not just in Greece. I thought that was interesting little bit of background on the
Darn,
situation in Greece.
darn those thought crimes. It is a sort of standard, and from the anarchist point of view, that you got to rob. That's where the money is. I mean, uh, the I mean, it's not a new thing, and of course, there's the horseshoe that people claim that the right wing militancy also they rob banks too. So it's just an interesting general question about the role of the state in controlling this sort of stuff. But in that same light, we should mention, Leonard Peltier is still behind bars, and there are other political prisoners that exist in the United States, for example, that also are under similar but not identical circumstance, and that's always an important issue. Greece, of course, is much more problematic relative to the to and fro of military coups and nascent democracy and a variety of very complex party politics that Greece has endured, that are shaped by the Eurocentric powers. Let's put it that way. So all of these things are interconnected.
Yeah, this 187A article reminded me of what's going through the House and Senate now. Or did it pass? About criminalizing dissent, essentially. It's
Yes.
Has that passed?
Not yet, but the whole issue, the underlying issue, and this actually goes to Project 2025, is to create greater control over press freedom, and we've just it's not like it's the first time it's happened in the United States, but they'd love to move it to a position, declare an emergency, suspend habeas corpus, which did occur during the Civil War. All kinds of stuff can happen. Not that it's going to happen, but we do have various folks who have said very stupid things, politicians who have said very stupid things about these matters.
Oh, I just have one last thing, thinking about abundance and going where the money is. I was traipsing through the remains of a Roman villa, first century Roman villa. Talk about opulence and abundance and where the money is. Holy shit. I came across these lamps that were absolutely incredible. Oil lamps. You can tell the size by my shoes on the bottom of the photo here. They're absolutely enormous.
Nice.
Terracotta.
Nifty. So they would be ones suspended from the ceiling or on the.
It's hard to tell. There's a hole right through it, so I think it would have been on a staff maybe, or suspended. Yeah, they had all manner of staffs and holding device for the different sizes of lamps, but these were these were definitely the biggest I've ever seen.
Nice.
Quite amazing. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Opulence.
Unbelievable, unreal.
Okay,
Okay.
let me yammer for a second on Ukraine, and then we can sort of wind stuff up and talk a little bit about what's happening tonight. Hopefully, let me just quickly talk about Ukraine, and then John can talk about Twilight Zone tonight, which we're looking forward to. Um, Needless to say, we're at day 1017, and it's a heck of a lot of days. Apparently, with the Trump administration coming in, there's some capitulation. Representatives of the American government, including what's his name, Kellogg of General Kellogg, who is probably one of the most loyal generals to Trump. He's going to be whatever it is. I don't think he's national security advisor. He's in the anyway in that orbit, and he's always been um, loyal to Trump. He and a bunch of other folks visited with Zelensky and have been discussing what kind of peace terms or ceasefires are going to occur in Ukraine. And with all due respect, the front end was that what they're going to accede to Putin's demands of freezing the battle lines in place, which is Putin has said this every time he's promoted any idea of a discussions of ceasefire, is that he wants to hold on to everything that he's stolen or invaded. And so that's sort of the front end of this. That, with all due respect, looking at the kind of capitulation that the Trump administration is making. Of course, the counter to that is that uh, the European Union, the Europeans, and NATO is not really quite happy with that idea. And the other issue related to that is the issue that started the thing in the first place, and that is Ukraine's membership in NATO. Which was a condition at the front end 3 years ago, and nearly 750,000 casualties later, uh, we're still pretty much at the same point, which is very distressing. And uh, as if you've been looking at any of my stuff, it is about still in the last instance, it's economic. It's about the mineral rich rare earth metals and other things that are in that part of Ukraine. And it is disturbing that essentially it is imperial of uh, the post-Soviet Russian regime to simply want to seize back what it thinks it owns, and problematic for all of its reasons relative to the sovereignty of, at least at the linguistic and cultural level, the Ukrainians. So that's kind of what's going on. Missiles have been fired. Last week there was the firing of a MIRV, that is a intermediate range ballistic missile that could actually normally is designed to reach London and Paris, etc. They just launched it at Dnipro, which isn't even Kiev, so they weren't really trying to test the air defense for Kiev, partially because, or people have speculated that Putin wasn't quite sure that this missile that they were launching, which seems to be, with all due respect, an old missile, a test missile, that he was simply trying to, wave a saber and, of course, threaten nuclear stuff. And because that's what the intermediate range ballistic missiles are designed for, and without yakking about the fact that there was a failure in the intermediate missile treaty and other things that are just much more complicated and stupid about this whole war. That's kind of happening. The Russians continue to suffer significant losses. Uh, North Koreans are not being quite put into harm's way, although some of them have already died. So there's that, and a bunch of things on the western side. There's been a very successful development in terms of certain types of intermediate range drone technology that is actually quite interesting. And there's a relative success in that with some interesting hits on infrastructure in the Russian case. So that's pretty much my report on Ukraine. I think there's plenty more. And if you are interested, you come on over to Daily Kos. There are a couple of folks there besides me who talk about Ukraine. Some people have complimented us that we're one of the few places writing in English that covers this on a daily basis. And there are several other folks who do pretty interesting job talking about various elements of the war. So there's that. But what else is happening tonight? I think we ended Penguin, and there's Twilight Zone, and Twilight Zone returns. John, you want to talk about Twilight Zone tonight?
Yes. Unlike Fargo, there is no UFO in tonight's Twilight Zone. Uh,
We were
tonight,
watching the end of season 2 last night, and spoiler alert, there are UFOs.
yes, it was quite good. But tonight on the Twilight Zone, we have an episode called The Jeopardy Room, which stars the late, great Martin Landau. And he is trying to escape the Iron Curtain. And there's someone who doesn't want him to do that. So we'll take a look at that.
No Alex Trebek, right?
No Alex Trebek, no.
Okay, looking forward to that. That's in about half an hour. And so we hope that you will listen to that. I'm not sure what else is on the schedule tonight.
That's it. We're actually wide open this evening. So if people want to come with their discussion
Music
ideas
or yammering or other
what have you,
things.
yes.
We're having actually a very interesting discussion about, prospects for socialism earlier on today. But we'll always come back to that at some bright and shining moment. So I guess we're getting close to the end. We apologize for starting a little late, but we'll try and do better next time. We always try and do better next time. We may even have food next week.
Take care, all.
Bye.